So welcome everybody. We're just going to give a little bit of time for everyone to connect. So you're in the right room if you're here to be part of the town hall on climate change in Honduras. So just bear with us for 1 minute. Thank you very much. So welcome everybody. I see you're still joining, so I'll just give you a second to continue doing that. Excited to have you join us. So we have a great event town hall that's underway, and I don't want to, truncate too much of our time. I want to give you enough time to ask questions, etc. So welcome and thank you for joining us from across Canada and around the world. My name is Tina, and I'll be facilitating today's session. I would like to just point out before anything that we do have live interpretation in French, Spanish, and English, and you should be seeing an interpretation icon. So I'll give you a moment just to connect to your language that you require. I also invite you to engage with us by asking questions through the Q&A box. And there's also a chat feature, but please, for the questions, please do use the Q&A. And I would like to start off with a land acknowledgement from where I am in Toronto. Land acknowledgements are a common practice in civic and community spaces across Canada. They're a small step towards truth and reconciliation. And for non-Indigenous Canadians, it's an opportunity to reflect on the impacts of colonialism and to be accountable to Indigenous people. Toronto itself is a word that originates from the Mohawk word takoranto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. A dish with one spoon was often mentioned by Indigenous peoples while making treaties with one another to avoid violent conflict. The dish represents the land that is to be shared peacefully, and the spoon represents the individuals living on and using the resources of the land in a spirit of mutual cooperation. And for those of you who are new to CUSO, welcome. For those of you who are not so new to CUSO, also welcome. And I say that because we've just launched our new strategic plan. And so I just want to highlight a couple of areas that's a little bit old and new to CUSO International, but definitely the way that we are working towards the next 5 years of our strategic plan. CUSO International is an international cooperation and development organization that works to create economic and social opportunities for marginalized groups. Together with our partners, we are focused on efforts to advance gender equality and social inclusion, improve economic resilience, and deliver progress on climate action. And so I'll stop there because it's quite a lengthy document, but I do invite you after this town hall, this great town hall on climate action, to visit our website to learn more about our next 5 years. So here on your screen, you should be seeing some really beautiful, striking images from our local partner. And I will say it one time, and then our Spanish-speaking colleagues and speakers will probably say it much better than I. Asociación Mesa de Organización Comunidades de Áreas Protegidas de Honduras. And for all intents and purposes, I will be calling it through the acronym of MOCAP. Today's conversation coincides with International Development Week. It's from February 5th through the 11th, and it's a unique opportunity for Canadians to celebrate the contributions to reducing poverty, as well as international assistance. The unifying theme this year is Go for the Goals, and let's continue to go for the goals. CUSO International will focus on Goal 13, which is climate action. And the mission statement around this action is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. There's several targets. I think there's 5 within this particular SDG, Sustainable Development Goal. But what we're going to focus on is CUSO's environment and biodiversity efforts underway in Honduras, which reflects target number 13.3, building knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. And I couldn't ask for a better lineup of local and global talent to press upon us their passion and urgency for moving their work forward. And let me get right to who our speakers are today. We have Candy Alvarado. She is the executive director of MOCAP. She is a native and a resident of Tegucigalpa, and I apologize if that's not the correct pronunciation. She holds a master's degree and 2 undergraduate degrees in forestry technician and forest engineering obtained at the National University of Forest Sciences. In her first years in the field, she coordinated sustainable management projects in communities within Patuca National Park and the southeast area of Tawaka-Asangi Biosphere Reserve. With more than 15 years of experience, Candy's involvement within civil society organizations that are dedicated to the co-management of protected areas has allowed her to develop her knowledge regarding the effective planning and management of protected areas. And so I'm going to stop there. Her full bio is on our Zoom registration page, or you can just ask me for it and I'll be happy to share that after the town hall. We also have with us, which is wonderful to have the diversity of speakers, Vanya Soseda is a national volunteer with CUSO International, and she ended her term in December of 2022, so just this few months ago. Born also in Tegucigalpa, she holds also a master's. Her primary and secondary studies were carried out in the municipality of San Ignacio Francisco Morazan, graduated from the National University of Autonoma in Honduras with a degree in biology, and also has a technical and professional baccalaureate in computer science. Within her studies, work, and her professional experience, she has been a volunteer in different areas. And recently, she has been a volunteer for MOCAP, as I mentioned, during the period of 2021 through December 2022. So over a year, and we're always grateful for your service, Vanya. So thank you. We also have with us our wonderful CPO, Country Program Officer, Karen Belinda Pavon Sierra, and you sent that in with your bio. So I wanted to say your full name. I know we often call you Karen Pavon, but that's your full name, and you're the country representative for international programs in Honduras. Karen joined CUSO International the same year I did in 2014, and currently she is the country representative in Honduras and holds a master's degree in project management and business administration. She's a professional with over 15 years of experience in the management and development projects financed by international agencies and executed by government institutions in the private sector. She has held leadership positions such as the Director of National Office for People with Disabilities in Honduras, as well as a Director of International Cooperation with the Ministry of Economic Development. And again, everyone's full bio can be found on the Zoom registration page. And no stranger to our town halls is Tanya Shepard, Head of Programs for Latin America and the Caribbean for CUSO International. Tanya has worked in the space and the sector for over 20 years, with direct experience working in several countries, including Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, and her focus has really been in working in community-based development, women's rights and participation, and youth economic empowerment. Again, Tanya's full bio is also available. And with that, Tanya was the last one because I'm bringing her up to to speak shortly. I wanted to thank everyone for taking the next hour to participate with us. We're looking forward to hearing your insights and really understanding this urgent call to action to combat climate. But before we bring Tanya up, I would like to launch a poll. So let's see around biodiversity. So how many trees does it take to provide a day of oxygen for 4 people? And you have the translations in Spanish and French as well. Ooh, I see quite a bit of interesting metrics. So it's just a fun one, and I want to get to our speakers. So I'm going to end the poll here and share the results. So you should be seeing on your screen quite a plethora of diversity. The answer is actually 1. So it's pretty amazing that 1 tree can support 4 people for certain oxygen needs. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask Tanya maybe to give us some local context and larger context as well. I know you've been traveling, so maybe you can share some insights as to, this new strategic area of CUSO International, advancing climate, how that intersects with other areas. And so I'll stop talking and over to you, and I'm going to stop the presentation while you share your thoughts.
Great. Thank you, Tina, for the introduction and the opportunity to participate in today's town hall. It is always my pleasure to speak and share my experience working with CUSO International. And today we're going to be talking about advancing climate action. And I'm happy to share with you a little bit of the work that CUSO International is doing in this field. I have been fortunate to be in the position of head of programs for Latin America and the Caribbean with CUSO International going on 9 years. And I've had the opportunity to visit communities in Africa, in Latin America, and the Caribbean, who are dealing with the impacts of climate change. And we're talking about things such as the destruction of agribusinesses due to hurricanes in Honduras, or little or no rainfall to water urban gardens in Peru. In Jamaica, we're working in the area of aquaculture to address food security issues with women living with disabilities. And I just had a recent visit to Tanzania where we met young women entrepreneurs who were growing peppers. We saw the impacts of long-lasting droughts on their crops and the impact that has. So I've seen many different examples of the impacts of climate change. As many people know, many people who are participating in our town hall today, climate change is one of the greatest global challenges of the 21st century. Globally, it has contributed to things such as increased temperatures. We see rising sea levels. We have extreme weather events such as mega droughts or tropical storms. We also see increased water and food insecurity, and we're also seeing forced migration and displacements of entire communities and individuals. The impacts of climate change have not only impacted biodiversity and ecosystems. Those were beautiful pictures that we saw from our partner MOCAP in Honduras. These biodiversity ecosystems are being impacted all across the world, but we also have to recognize that climate change has also stalled decades of progress against poverty, food insecurity, and reduction of inequality. And when we think about climate change, we know it does not discriminate against one's color, class, ethnicity, age, gender, or even income groups. However, the impact of climate change on gender is not the same. And that's something I want to talk about today because it's very near and dear to our work with CUSO International, is really looking at climate and gender. For example, when we think about women or gender and climate change, women are one of the most vulnerable groups to climate change. They are more vulnerable than men, for example, to the impacts of climate change, mainly because, firstly, they represent the majority of the world's poor. And secondly, they're proportionally more dependent on threatened natural resources, especially in areas such as Africa, for example, many countries in Latin America as well. We see that they're really, really dependent on natural resources that provide food, that provide living space, that provide cattle for income generating opportunities. So it's really, really important to address some of these issues. Women, for example, have much less access than men to resources. For example, women have less access to land to grow food. They have less access to income generating opportunities that helps them pay for child's education. They have less access to credit, which means they can't always access land to grow food. They also have less access to technology, which helps increase agricultural production. And lastly, and I think most importantly, they lack access to decision-making structures. And because they don't have this access or to participate in decision-making, this really impacts their capacity or their ability to adapt to climate change. Recognize the importance of advancing climate change or climate action. And Tina brought up that we are in the process of launching a new strategic plan. CUSO International, as part of this new strategic plan, has prioritized advancing climate action as one of their main goals. And the specific focus within this particular goal is really look at promoting leadership and participation in rights of women and other marginalized groups in climate action. And we know that in spite of vulnerability, I gave many reasons why women are vulnerable, lack of access to resources, technology, to education. However, when we look at historically the role that women can play in advancing climate action, we see that they can be really active and effective agents and promoters of climate change and adaptation. For example, when we think about women, in particular Indigenous women, historically, we see women who have developed traditional knowledge and skills to things such as how to best harvest water, how to best store water, how to recycle water. They also are doing a lot of work on food preservation and natural resource management. So it's very important that we recognize the role that women can play in climate action. I thought what I would share with you today is a little bit about CUSO International's work in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and how our work is increasingly focused on building the capacity in other marginalized groups, including Indigenous communities. So in Honduras, for example, we're doing a lot of work with Indigenous communities around natural resource management. Also looking at a lot
Sorry,
of
Tani,
Yep.
if you can slow down just a little bit for our interpreters. I think the French takes a little bit longer
Sure.
to translate, but thank you very much. Continue.
So when I was talking a little bit about, I want to share with you some of our programming in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Increasingly, our work is focused on building the capacity of women and other marginalized groups, such as Indigenous communities. So for example, in Honduras, we're doing a lot of work with MOCAP, our partner, and Indigenous communities who are living and generating income from natural resources. So let's look at how can we best work between the two groups and how we can better preserve natural resources so that they can also be a form of income generation for Indigenous communities. We're also doing a lot of work with persons living with disabilities in Honduras as well. And I'm sure Karen may touch on this, but we're doing a lot of work. How do we better prepare persons living with disabilities in the event of a natural disaster? We see the impacts of hurricanes in Honduras, the destruction that they've had on agribusinesses that provide income for families. We've also seen the impact of hurricanes on community infrastructure. So bridges that have collapsed, which means there's an interruption in transportation. So we're doing a lot of work with local communities to help them identify and participate in community-led solutions to combat climate change. So I would like to share with you today a few examples based on my work with CUSO International and the great work that we are doing with local communities across Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. For example, in Cameroon, we have been working with local partners who've developed a cell phone app to increase access by smallholder farmers, specifically women farmers, so that they are accessing weather data and information that is going to help them in their farming techniques. So for example, this cell phone app, and we know in today's world, mostly everybody has access, if not to a smartphone, then to other type of cell phones. And the idea with this particular app is that we can provide timely weather information along with a 10-day forecast. So farmers are able to get the most up-to-date weather information, and they also receive information on climate variations. The app also provides a guide to climate impacts for different business sectors, such as the agricultural sector, for example. It's allowing women farmers also to follow the variations of climate, which is also very important when you're trying to plan for your planting season, or you're trying to plan what to plant actually in the particular crop. And lastly, and most importantly, it also provides access to early warning systems that also helps farmers better prepare for their season. In Peru, and this is a programming area that is particularly close because I just came back from Peru on a visit. In Peru, we've had a very interesting partnership with local partners where we are working with different organizations and women-led community groups to create green spaces in the city of Lima. And the idea with these green spaces is that women are able to produce food for their families, as well as in turn, when there is extra produce, they are also able to sell that produce in their communities as a form of income. In Lima, if many of you do not already know, it is built on a desert with essentially no rainfall. And nobody ever believes me when I say it doesn't rain in Lima, but it actually does not rain. So when we think about urban areas in Lima, it's arid, it's built on a desert. We're thinking, how can we better support communities? Something we've been doing for many years now in coordination with local partners is providing technical support and training to urban women farmers. And this is to help them grow gardens in urban Lima. And this includes, for example, introducing new techniques to women urban farmers so they can recycle water that can then be used to water the urban gardens. We're looking at the introduction of new water effective irrigation systems, which is particularly important when there are water storages and it doesn't rain. So that's also very interesting. And lastly, also introducing new or innovative farming techniques specifically for urban gardens that helps farmers to mitigate climate impacts and increase the yield of produce. I want to share just a quick story with you. I've been traveling to Lima, Peru since the, last 8 years. I've had the opportunity to visit a number of our different projects. And I remember going back 5 years, we had started the discussions, look, we'd like to start supporting women-led urban gardens. We didn't quite understand the concept. And I remember I went to visit one of the urban gardens and we arrived and it was a large brown space, sand, and full of garbage. And so thinking, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to provide technical support. We're going to help women grow produce. We're going to transform this arid, brown sort of, I don't want to say it was depressing, but it's just not a lot of life in this area. And when I went back, I've been going back about 5 years now. And when I went back about 2 or 3 years ago, you can see the garden had started, things were growing, it was very beautiful. And I had the opportunity to go back very recently. And that brown space that was filled with sand and garbage has now been turned into this very large, lush urban garden. It is filled with different fruits. It's filled with different vegetables as well as herbs. So it was just amazing to see the transformation of this area from something that was brown and full of discarded garbage to now a thriving urban garden. It was very, very impressive. And to say that most of the gardens, so the larger garden is made up into smaller plots that are led by different community members, a lot of which are women. It is just amazing to see the transformation. So part of what we're doing through this is to help other gardens start to grow within Lima. The other thing that's really interesting about the urban gardens is because of there's drought, there's not a lot of rain, there's a lot of food insecurity, especially considering the impacts of COVID. So when you have these safe and healthy gardens that are producing good food, what we've seen is that women have started to band together to create community kitchens in recognition of the impacts of COVID, loss of employment, loss of income to buy food for families. The women farmers started getting together to support community kitchens. And the idea is that we can take this safe and healthy food that is being produced in urban gardens that can fuel community kitchens, that is providing health and safety meals to community members. And the women, they're volunteering their time really with the ultimate goal of addressing the issue of food insecurity in urban communities. There was just a quick introduction of some of the work we're doing. I just want to reiterate that CUSO International confirms our commitment in partnership with local partners that we will continue advancing climate action globally. Thank you very much, Tina.
No, thank you, Tandy. It's interesting as you speak that even though we're really connecting with climate action, that I see that cross-pollination or intersectional approach to programming where it's helping women at like that gender equality component, as well as like resiliency, economic resiliency. So, you know, helping climate helps a lot of other areas of our work as well. So thank you for that. And now I would like to bring Karen to the stage, and Karen's going to do two things. She's first going to just on her own speak to some of the project that she's working on in Honduras, as well as some of the impacts that she is seeing. And then she's going to bring in Candy and Vanya, both like together and separately, and do a bit of a roundtable discussion with them. They had these beautiful, I mean, look at this picture. They had these beautiful images. So while they're speaking, I may show some images, I may stop the presentation. But what I'd like to do now is to bring Karen to the microphone and give her the space to share the impact that's happening on climate action and biodiversity education in Honduras. Over to you, Karen. And just again, I'm not sure, I think I gave you the choice, Spanish or English, whatever you're most comfortable in. There is that interpretation button there.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Thank you, everybody. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here sharing with you part of our work that we are doing in Honduras, and more than happy to share this space with MOCAP, one of our partners that we have been working with for many years. So what are we doing in CUSO in Honduras? We have been working here for more than 20 years. We have been working with a lot of people, communities, partners, and we are hoping to continue working with all the stakeholders, like donors, participants, partners, and of course with wonderful volunteers that comes to Honduras to join our teams to work with us together to look for new ideas, to look for different innovative ways to promote development and to improve the well-being of people. And as my partners were saying, especially those people living in disadvantage, living in exclusion, and living with very hard conditions, like people with disabilities, like indigenous population, and of course, women that are part, of our priorities in all the activities, projects, and actions that we are doing with our partners. Our goal is to promote the development, of course, but we want to promote a development that includes everybody, a development that permits to participate all people in equal conditions, a development with this real human right approach, but also a development that includes and take account all the ecosystem. We are convinced, definitely, and we have been learning a lot, and we are convinced that we need to work as a team. We need to work in all areas, looking for new ideas, including innovation, etc., to look and identify new development alternative that works for everybody, including, the whole ecosystem. How are we doing this? And the answer has a lot of different ways and important things to bring, but I would say, and I would like to highlight the partnerships. Our partners are goal for us, partnering with local organizations, with communities, with people in communities, with donors, with everybody, is super important for us. And this is the way that permit us to really contribute to create development and better conditions for people and for human resources, of course, in our country and in all countries where we are working. Every day, every activity, every meeting, every space like this is an opportunity to learn from our partners, with them, with participants, etc. So in this case, we are sharing the space again with the MOCAP, which is the Mesa Comanejadora de Áreas Protegidas de Honduras. This is a local network. It is a local organization that has more than 15 years working in Honduras, and they do a lot of things. And I have to say that I am always impressed with their work. They do a lot of things with quality, and they do all these things with a very small team in the country. We have been carrying out a diversity of activities to improve the management systems of protected areas in Honduras. And we have been working with them in different actions of things. Of course, I mean, one of the things that we are looking for is to increase the capacities to do a lot of activities to strengthen their institutional capacity to deliver better and more services to communities. Something very interesting from the MOCAP is that they are not only working alone. As they said at the beginning, they are part of a network. They are coordinating with more than, I would say, around 20 local organizations. And these organizations are part of the owners of the land. So it's very important that what they are doing, because they are supporting not only providing technical team aim to create and to find and to implement protocols, etc., to manage the forest, the natural resources, but also to find that perfect balance that we are looking for between human development, meaning by that the generation of income, for example, for families, using natural resources in a very intelligent and sustainable way, but also having this very firm and strategic focus on natural resources management. Besides, I mean, all the institutional strengthening, we have been implementing different activities with them, like, for example, designing and implementing campaigns like the Jaguars for All, that it has been taking place in the Rio Plátano area, one of the most important, not only for Honduras, but for the region in the world. Is part of the natural, the areas protected in Honduras. We do a lot of training with MOCAP and other partners to communities, like in the picture that you are seeing now. We were providing training on a ex-ante carbon balance tool. This is something very technical, developed by the FAO, one of organization that is part of our network also in Honduras. And like this example, we are always looking for new opportunities, new interesting topics, new interesting tools that we can share with beneficiaries, with participants, and with partners to increase capacities and knowledge. Something very important is water. One of the resources that it is one of the areas that we are working were more with MOCAP. So, and I'm sure that you will see some pictures around, I mean, the different activities, including training coordination with water board at local level, to help them to find new ways to be prepared to improve the management and, for example, small technologies, but very friendly and eco-friendly technologies to harvest water, for example, especially in those communities where women are usually the responsible for the management and the access and the carry on all activities around the use of water. Where we are going, I would say that we have a lot of dreams, we have a lot of plans, and we have a lot of really desire to continue working together with the authorities, with our partners like MOCAP. And our dream, I would say, is not only contributing to increase knowledge by training, educational, environmental packages, etc., but also, I mean, and more to really bring people to adopt, to live as part of a ecosystem, and having that in mind, I mean, all the time, to share power with everybody, but also taking care of our home and the earth, our forest, animals, etc. So I guess because of the time, Tina, that is a very brief summary of our work, and I will be here happy to share with you more specific examples in the Q&A section.
Yeah, that was excellent. Thank you so much, Karen. It's super interesting. You're always emphasizing the partner MOCAP. And so we have the partner here. It's not always where we have a volunteer and a partner. So maybe I can ask you, Karen, to invite Candy and Vanya, and maybe you can have a little bit of a conversation. I know you deliberated and explained a lot of the programming in Honduras, but the numbers of partnerships, I think you said that MOCAP is a hub for other organizations. So maybe Candy can speak to that, and you can ask them some questions around kind of the biodiversity education work that both of them are involved in. So I'm going to turn off my camera. This could be a round table. If you want me to turn on slides, I can, but I think it would be nice just to hear you guys speak. So over to you, Karen, Vanya, and Candy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tina, and welcome again, Candy, Vania. Okay, I will switch to Spanish para hacer más fácil la conversación.
So please just use your interpretation button that you see on the bottom, because thank you for reminding me, Karen, they will be speaking in their native language of Spanish. So go ahead in Spanish.
Okay, muchas gracias, Tina. Pues bueno, como dijimos anteriormente, es un gusto estar aquí compartiendo a través de las pantallas un poco acerca del trabajo que estamos realizando aquí en Honduras. Yo diría que es una excelente oportunidad para, además de conocer, por supuesto, el excelente trabajo que nuestro socio, la MOCAP, está realizando, y algunas de las cosas pues, que hemos hecho en conjunto. Nos encantaría poder compartir, Candy, Vania, con todas las personas acerca de ustedes, ¿no? De quiénes son, cómo es que ustedes llegaron aquí, cómo es que están dos mujeres poderosas trabajando en este tema, en esta área, que además hay que decir que es un área en donde históricamente ha sido liderada y con mucha participación de hombres, ¿no? Entonces, para mí pues también es un placer, pero yo ya tengo el placer de conocerlas, así es que me encantaría darles pues unos minutos para que ustedes se puedan presentar y nos cuenten un poquito cómo es que ustedes han llegado a esta área, cómo es que ustedes están trabajando acá, qué les apasiona de su trabajo. Le dejo a Candy primero.
Gracias, Karen. Muchas gracias a todos por la invitación. Realmente es un gusto para nosotros poder compartir, darles a conocer un poco el trabajo muy bonito que nosotros desarrollamos en nuestro país. Pues les comento, yo soy forestal de profesión, nada más que en mi línea siempre me dicen que soy de esas forestales que se sale del rubro. ¿Por qué razón? Normalmente consideramos que nuestro sector forestal solo tiene que ver con la madera o con el bosque, ¿no? Y dentro de nuestra visión como MOCAP, más allá de eso. ¿Qué es MOCAP en este sentido? MOCAP es una estructura de organización civil que trabaja mucho el concepto de áreas protegidas y de zonas de conservación y biodiversidad. Y de ahí es donde nace mi amor, ¿no? Hace muchos años atrás, desde que estábamos estudiando, cuando nosotros empezamos a ver, yo soy capitalina y notamos que calidades, cantidades de agua ya se estaban viniendo afectando, y de esa manera decidimos hacer un cambio, ¿no? De profesión hacia donde estábamos llevando nuestro enfoque para poder aportar algunos elementos que como país pudiéramos hacer la diferencia. la fortuna me permitió llegar a una organización que exactamente trabaja en ese sentido. Y pues eso ha conllevado, ¿no? Que todo ese pensamiento y que todo ese gusto por el trabajo que nosotros desarrollamos dentro de las 91 áreas protegidas, pues se vuelva nuestro día. Comemos, desayunamos, almorzamos y cenamos con áreas protegidas, con las zonas de conservación, y nuestra meta es siempre tener hacia adelante, ¿no? Una acción climática justa, no solamente para las comunidades, sino que para todos los niveles de participación. ¿Vania?
Gracias, Candy. Vania, adelante.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Vania Sauceda. Para comentarles un poco, crecí y viví la mayor parte de mi tiempo fuera de Tegucigalpa, más en una comunidad. Allí aprendí a desenvolverme en lo que es en el campo. De ahí, un parque nacional de acá, cerca de Tegucigalpa, Parque Nacional La Tigra, fue como el que me impulsó a poder estudiar biología. Y gracias a Dios, el haber estudiado eso me ha permitido el día de hoy estar acá y poder ser parte de lo que es la conservación y la protección de nuestros ecosistemas. Afortunadamente, pude realizar mi práctica profesional aquí en lo que es la MOCAP. Luego me quedé haciendo lo que es voluntariado, perdón, y se dio la oportunidad con Karen, Candy, hablando de que se iban a involucrar lo que son los voluntarios nacionales, y me dieron esa gran oportunidad. Realmente para mí ha sido bonito porque me ha permitido crecer. Y crecer en el sentido de que a veces nosotros cuando salimos de la universidad tal vez no se nos dan esas oportunidades laborales, ya que no contamos con la gran experiencia que las organizaciones o las instituciones actualmente necesitan, ¿verdad? Pero esto sí nos ayuda a que nosotros podamos crecer y adquirir esa experiencia y poder aportar parte de nuestro conocimiento. Realmente dentro de mis acciones como voluntaria ha sido participar con un bello grupo de personas que son los guardarrecursos del Sistema Nacional de Áreas Protegidas de Honduras, personas que realizan sus acciones locales para contribuir en la mejora de nuestros ecosistemas. Yo realmente admiro a estos muchachos, a toda la iniciativa que tienen, porque nosotros le llamamos que son ese vínculo entre los ecosistemas y las comunidades. Son los que están ahí, son los que apoyan, son los que ayudan, los que cualquier necesidad que tenga la comunidad se aboca a ellos, a los guardarrecursos, y realmente es algo gratificante poder ser parte de todo esto. Y a futuro, realmente algo que yo espero es que puedan seguir estos socios, que Puso Internacional pueda seguir apoyando, y bueno, en este caso Puso Honduras, seguir apoyando a lo que es la MOCAP, porque sí consideramos que el papel que la MOCAP realiza y hace en Honduras es muy influyente.
Gracias, Vania. Y bueno, siguiendo ya lo último que estabas comentando, Vania, ¿qué nos pueden decir acerca del trabajo de la MOCAP? ¿Por qué es tan importante continuar apoyando este trabajo de la MOCAP? ¿Por qué es tan importante mantener estas 91 áreas protegidas del país? ¿Qué significa eso? No solamente para Honduras, para la región, sino para el mundo. ¿Qué nos pueden compartir?
El Sistema Nacional de Honduras en concepto de áreas protegidas, como lo mencioné, son 91 áreas, 5.1 millones de hectáreas, corresponde al 36% de los bosques del país. Estamos hablando de un territorio muy extenso, ¿no? Muchas veces con poblaciones indígenas dentro de ellas, grupos sociales totalmente diferenciados, ¿no? Nuestra red como lo manifestó Karen anteriormente, es una red de organizaciones de sociedad civil que trabaja en 50 áreas protegidas y nuestro papel fundamental es trabajar lineamientos estratégicos y políticas públicas que puedan favorecer la gestión y algo que nosotros denominamos comanejo, que es el desarrollo de gobernanza administrativa dentro de las áreas protegidas. Esa gobernanza la desarrollan basado con el Instituto de Conservación Forestal, una de las fotografías que Karen presentó bajo un convenio no con el ICF, y se desarrollan a través de nuestros socios, que son en muchos casos las mancomunidades u organizaciones de sociedad civil como fundaciones y asociaciones. Entonces, cualquier proyección que nosotros tenemos para trabajar en campo lo hacemos a través de lo que nosotros denominamos vinculaciones. Una de esas vinculaciones es apuntándole muy certeramente, como lo mencionaba Tina, al ODS 17. Consideramos que a través de las alianzas y la cooperación estratégica hemos logrado avanzar con programas de país que nos permiten empoderar no el concepto de una MUCAP como una red de comanejadores de áreas protegidas, sino como el concepto de conservación, en donde nosotros demostramos que las áreas protegidas somos una inversión a largo plazo y no somos un gasto. En este sentido, es como nuestro formato de trabajo local nos ha permitido evolucionar para que la gestión de las áreas protegidas pues vaya mejorando. Tenemos amenazas como en todos los países, son amenazas latentes, en algún momento van a poder tener la oportunidad de ver el cúmulo de fotografías que se compartieron, en donde muchas veces nosotros decimos, necesitamos una bandera, necesitamos un motivo para continuar defendiendo nuestro territorio. En fotografía atrás van a ver una de las zonas núcleos de la biosfera Cacique Lempira, uno de los sitios que en lo particular pues yo gozo de vivirla, explorarla. Actualmente ustedes recuerdan que es más barato conservar que recuperar. Entonces las acciones, las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza que podemos promover a fin de contrarrestar todos los fenómenos que se vienen con el tema del cambio climático, con el tema de las amenazas latentes, antropogénicas o no antropogénicas, forman parte del desarrollo del trabajo que desarrolla actualmente la MUCAP. Y como bien certeramente lo apuntaba Vania, nosotros hemos creado programas en redes igualmente, en donde tenemos en este momento uno de los más fuertes, el Programa Nacional de Guarda Recursos, en donde depositamos el trabajo a las organizaciones locales, en este caso, para que esos guarda recursos que son jóvenes comunitarios o son jóvenes egresados de promotores ambientales obtengan un empleo fijo dentro de sus comunidades y se vuelvan como ese actor de cambio, porque ellos trabajan mucho el concepto de educación ambiental y nosotros como país estamos claros que lo que más necesitamos es elevar la conciencia de nuestros ciudadanos.
Vania, quizás rápidamente, Vania, si solo nos resumes por qué quieres seguir trabajando, apoyando a la MOCAP, por qué es importante.
Ok, algo directo, realmente me he dado cuenta de ese impacto que tiene la MOCAP en en todas las áreas protegidas a nivel nacional de nuestro país, ¿verdad? Desarrollamos acciones que influyen de una manera muy positiva. Desarrollamos acciones que benefician a otros. Y yo logro ver ese impacto que realmente yo cuando estudié dije, quiero estar en una organización donde se puedan tomar decisiones en pro de la conservación de nuestras áreas protegidas. Y gracias a Dios aquí estoy. Y sí considero de que la MOCAP es una excelente organización a la cual se le debe de seguir apoyando.
Muchas gracias, Vania. Bueno, y para cerrar esta sección, no sé si pudieran compartir cómo ha sido esta experiencia de trabajar con CUSO. Ya tenemos pues varios años haciéndolo, uniendo esfuerzos, trabajando en conjunto. Entonces, si de manera pues muy resumida nos pudieran compartir acerca de esa experiencia y qué esperan entonces de este acuerdo, de esta experiencia conjunta para los próximos.
Muchas gracias, Karen. Muy interesante la pregunta. Yo siempre pongo a una MOCAP 10 años atrás y pongo una MOCAP 10 años adelante. Yo agradezco la oportunidad que CUSO nos dio a nosotros de poder acceder a ese primer convenio. Realmente siento que fue una coyuntura que se dio en un momento donde nosotros como organización éramos muy pequeños, hemos crecido. La parte muy importante en esto que yo les puedo decir, tenemos una red que se ha catapultado gracias a la colaboración que CUSO le ha brindado, a la credibilidad que la misma CUSO nos ha permitido avanzar en este sentido. Los voluntarios, Mario, Bárbara, Nuri, que son los internacionales, Vania y Adonai como voluntarios nacionales, no se convirtieron para nosotros en voluntarios, se convirtieron para nosotros en familia. ¿Qué quiero decir con esto? Yo miro para MOCAP una relación concurso para unos 10 años más, en donde ambas entidades, basadas en los testimonios y basadas en los mismos objetivos en común que tenemos, vamos encaminando cada uno de los esfuerzos y las estrategias que como país podemos desarrollar. Y para esto solamente requerimos la voluntad. Y esa voluntad al menos ha sido manifiesta en las relaciones que hemos podido desarrollar a la fecha.
Muchísimas
Ok.
gracias, Candy. No sé, Vania, si quieres agregar algo en los últimos.
Sí, algo pequeño.
Ok.
Candy ella habla desde su punto de vista de directora excelente. Yo desde mi punto de vista como voluntaria fue algo bonito, gratificante y también el poder decir soy voluntaria curso, algo bonito y poder compartir y relacionarme con otros voluntarios internacionales que yo realmente admiro la comunicación, el aprender de ellos y ellos de nosotros ha sido algo muy bonito. Eso solamente.
Muchas gracias, Vania. Okay, Tina, over to you. It has been a
thank
pleasure
you.
to share this space.
It was wonderful listening to the work that's being done, and really what's come through is the passion and the commitment around climate action and biodiversity. And it sounds like the country of Honduras is so lush and has so many different protected areas that you're working in. It's just phenomenal. And so I know we're running a little bit long, but please stay with us. We do have some questions in the Q&A, and this is your opportunity to ask directly. It's really a way forward for CUSO International, having a volunteer, having a partner, having thought leadership from Honduras, from Canada. It's an opportunity where it's a plethora of talent and thought leadership that we don't always have on these town halls that hopefully will be a way forward for us. So please put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll get to them. I invite everyone, Karen, Tanya, if you can, I know there's a bit of glitch technically, Vanya and Candy, to turn on your cameras and to potentially answer. We had one question in advance, and I think it was already answered, actually. I think Candy was talking about that in the fact of local governments. So the question was around our local governments. I don't think they specified whether it's Honduras or global context, but supportive of advancing climate action from a government policy standpoint. So I don't know who wants to answer that, but it's around government involvement and support around policy for climate action. So over to you, one of you.
Would you like
Exactly.
to go, Tina, or Karen? I think everybody has their hand up.
Exactly, yes, but I think Candy, no, can...
Sure, go ahead, Candy.
Yeah, it would be great to have Candy.
Okay. Solamente para aportarles, en el caso de nuestro país, al menos en materia de conservación, tenemos una política pública clara sobre el tema cambio climático, en donde nosotros, como yo me pongo de la camisa de sociedad civil, al menos nosotros somos veedores de este proceso. Las comunidades se han vuelto sabedoras comunitarias y esos participantes activos. Y es sobre esa lucha que nosotros hacemos, que nuestros gobiernos actualmente, tanto los locales como el gobierno central, ha apuntado a mejorar. De esa forma se han abierto oportunidades, como lo mencionaba Tania anteriormente, en empezar a hablar sobre economía circular, economía azul, economía verde, cosas que nos van a permitir a todos nosotros a encaminar los procesos que sean de una manera más conjunta y más dinámica en favor a los indicadores que tenemos como compromiso de país.
Thank you, Candy. I'll need some support, and I am hoping that my panelists can see some of the Spanish written questions. I don't read Spanish. There's one from for Vanya, and I'm not sure what the question is asking.
You want me to? Do you want me to translate, Tina, or to have the interpreters translate?
Or Vanya Vanya, I can't speak Spanish. Can you ask Vanya if she can see the question?
Vanya, no sé si tú puedes ver en el chat donde dice como preguntas y respuestas. Hay una pregunta de Leslie Alvarenga para ti y dice que nos dice que la tigre hoy en Tegucigalpa, la última vez que visité Honduras, las quemaduras se estaban acercando debido a querer construcción de casas. Esa es la pregunta.
Sí, creo que es más tema de comentario, mencionando ella la situación actual sobre los incendios forestales aquí en La Tigra y sobre la construcción de algunas infraestructuras dentro del área protegida.
Gracias. So Irene is asking for, and I think you gave quite a few, Tandy, and I'm just being mindful of the time, but maybe one more example of a grassroots project that's working to mitigate climate change. Maybe Irene started into the town hall a little bit later, so might have missed some of your context where you were sharing about Peru and Cameroon and obviously Lima and then Honduras as well, but maybe you can just reiterate one of those examples.
Sure. I mean, I can talk a little bit of Tanzania. I touched lightly on it. We, on a recent visit, went to with one of our partners to there providing technical support to youth to become entrepreneurs in the area of agriculture. We visited a young lady who had started to grow peppers. Peppers are a very, very popular and expanding market in Tanzania, not only for local consumption, but also export. We went to visit her crop, and more than 50% of the crop had been destroyed because of a long-lasting drought. So I think that's an area where communities are getting involved. So working with partners around water irrigation systems. So looking at simple, low cost effective irrigation methods or recycling of water. So those are some of the pressing issues we saw in Tanzania.
Thank you, Tandy. For some of the questions around volunteering, I'm happy to answer those offline. I maybe want to get to one or two if we can. How CUSO has contributed to the gender approach in its different projects, changing the patriarchy that is often seen in the communities. So maybe I think there was some synergies in your earlier context as well. Even though we were focusing on climate, you did bring in the gender equity as well as the economic resiliency, but maybe you can kind of highlight the gender approach as it relates maybe to our theme, which is around climate.
Sure, I can. And I mean, I would also invite Karen, who's working on the ground in the area of gender equality and social inclusion. But I think what we've recognized within CUSO International is historically the role that women play in land stewardship and natural resource management, but also recognize that many times women are left out of the conversations, decision-making, dialogue around climate change, and especially decision-making that affects local communities. So within CUSO International, gender equality and social inclusion is our main focus. So obviously what we're doing across all of our countries is really ensuring that participation of women and other marginalized groups, such as persons living with disabilities, indigenous communities, so that they really are at the forefront of participating. And it's not just about participating, but recognizing the rights that women and other groups have, the right they have in playing a more important role in climate change.
And maybe Karen, would you like to add some context to that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. Maybe just to mention two specific examples, and one is here in this space. This is one of the examples. We are partnering, we are working very closely with organizations like MOCAP, led by women, with a lot of participation of women and promoting the participation of women in communities in these all spaces, aim to improve the management systems, in this case of protected areas. The other example that I can share very quickly is that we are working with the model forest platforms, this initiative to promote participatory governance at local level, but having, in the center, focus in natural resources management as the key for to really achieve local development. So in this case, we are working with 2 platforms in Honduras, and we are promoting, inviting, and also creating capacities of community leaders, women in Olancho and in Lloro to become part of these decision-making spaces at local level.
So thank you very much. And I'm just being respectful of the time. I do want to thank all of our speakers for participating. I'm sure there's things that keep you up at night, and I'm sure there's things that are just so passionate and committed to move forward. But you'll have to stay tuned for the next town hall to hear all about that from them. I do want to thank MOCAF and reiterate the emphasis on local partnerships with CUSO International, and that our new strategy within the organization is moving one of the pillars towards climate advancement. So thank you, Candy. Thank you, Vanya. Thank you, Karen and Tanya. You don't know kind of some of the technical glitches we were having earlier on, but this all worked out, and I'm so very, very grateful to all of you. I would also like to acknowledge that CUSO International gratefully acknowledges the financial support of the Government of Canada through Global Affairs Canada, as well as our donors. There's lots of opportunity. CUSOinternational.org is the hub for recruitment, to find out about our Catalyst magazine, to sign up for e-alerts, to find our strap plan, to find out more stories about Honduras. So really, thank you for all the many ways that you support CUSO International. If you would like to support and be an advocate with us through action around climate and diversity, biodiversity education, do please consider making a donation today, because we can't do this work without you. And with that, thank you, stay safe, and in solidarity, bye for now. Look at that, 1 o'clock. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye now.
Thank you,
Tina.
everybody.
Bye now.